and welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION The World this one. I'm Jyotsna Kumar, and this is World Daily. Let's begin with the headlines. Trump has lifted 25% punitive tariffs on Indian imports after announcing an interim trade deal with New Delhi. U.S. duties are being cut from 50 to 18%. Both sides push towards a full trade agreement by March. PM Modi is heading to Malaysia today to hold bilateral talks with PM Anwar Ibrahim. His first visit since ties upgraded to comprehensive strategic partnership in August 2024 aims to explore defense collaborations. U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington will resume talks with Iran early next week following discussions in Oman. Describes initial dialogue as very good, suggesting Iran is eager to reach a deal. Islamic State claims responsibility for a suicide blast at mosque in Islamabad that killed at least 31 people during Friday prayers in the deadliest attack in Pakistan's capital since the 2008 Marriott Hotel bombing. Kremlin says a third round of Russia-Ukraine peace talks should take place soon, though no date is set. Recent negotiations in Abu Dhabi lead to a major prisoner swap, but made no progress on territorial disputes. Thousands of Gaddafi loyalists attend burial of Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, son of the late Libyan ruler in Bani Walid. Was once considered Libya's heir apparent, Saif was shot dead in Zintan earlier this week. Japan's Liberal Democratic Party, led by PM Sanae Takaichi, is poised for a major victory in Sunday's lower house election. Polls suggest ruling coalition, including Japan Innovation Party, could secure two-thirds majority. China overturns a death sentence of Canadian Robert Lloyd, detained on drug charges in 2014, in a possible sign of diplomatic thaw as Prime Minister Mark Carney seeks to boost trade ties with Beijing. NASA says 4 astronauts will launch next week on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket to restaff International Space Station after an emergency medical evacuation of previous crew following recent delays. Now, in the high-stakes talks held in Oman, Iran rejected demands from the United States to halt its nuclear fuel enrichment, while both sides expressed willingness to continue discussions to seek a diplomatic path that could avert a military confrontation. Following the meeting, U.S. slapped fresh sanctions on Iran, targeting shipping companies and vessels tied to its oil exports. And according to the Iran state media, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told American negotiators that Iran will neither end enrichment nor move the process offshore. Although both sides stuck to their positions during the indirect talks, Araghchi said he expects to hold more negotiations while hailing the positive atmosphere surrounding talks. The talks were conducted indirectly, with both sides holding alternate discussion with Omani diplomats.
As a whole, I can say it was a good start. But whether we can continue this depends on consultations in the capitals and decisions to be made there. There was agreement on continuing the talks, but the time and manner of the talks will be determined after further consultation through Mr. al-Busaidi, God willing.
The indirect talks were the first between the two nations since the United States joined Israel's war with Iran in June with strikes on nuclear sites. They also come just under a month after Iranian authorities launched a crackdown on protests that left scores dead. While reacting to the negotiations, President Trump said that they held very good talks, telling reporters aboard Air Force One that Iran looks like it wants to make a deal very badly. They confirmed the two sides plan to meet again early next week in hopes of easing tensions. Meanwhile, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot has said that during a visit to Lebanon that Iran should stop being a destabilizing power. He cautioned that Iran's nuclear program and its support for groups he described as terrorist represent a serious threat to both regional stability and the security of European nations.
Il faut évidemment que l'Iran, et c'est l'objet des discussions.
It is clear that Iran, and this is the subject of the discussions that, if I understand correctly, took place in Oman today, must also renounce its role as a destabilizing power in the nuclear program, the missile program, the ballistic program, and its support for terrorist groups in the region poses a threat to countries in the Near and Middle East, as well as to European countries.
Pour les pays du Proche et du Moyen-Orient.
And to tell us more on this, our correspondent Susan Thani sent us a report from New York. Let's listen in.
The latest from those nuclear negotiations, it appears that Iran refused to agree to the U.S. demand to stop enriching uranium or move its program offshore, a core sticking point that's blocked progress for years. Instead, Tehran insists it has a right to enrich and wants sanctions relief in return. The U.S. team, including senior diplomats and even top military commanders, want broader concessions from the Islamic Republic of Iran, including limitations on Iran's missile forces and regional influence as well. So what's next? And where do the United States and Iran go from here? Well, both sides called this a good start and planned more rounds of talks. When? We don't know. But deep mistrust and strategic differences means a breakthrough is far from certain. Susan Tahrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Now, President Donald Trump has signed an executive order rescinding the 25% punitive tariff on all Indian imports, which was imposed due to New Delhi's purchase of Russian oil. And this move comes as Washington and New Delhi unveil an interim trade framework aimed at strengthening economic ties and avoiding a full-blown trade dispute. Earlier this week, President Trump announced a sweeping trade agreement with India that would slash U.S. tariffs on Indian goods from 50% to 18%, following Trump's claim that New Delhi had agreed to halt its purchases of discounted Russian crude oil. India imports nearly 90% of its oil needs. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, New Delhi had been buying cheaper Russian oil, averaging around 1.2 million barrels per day in January, but projected to fall to about 800,000 barrels per day by March. As part of the interim agreement framework, both the sides aim to negotiate a broader bilateral trade agreement. A formal deal is expected to be signed by mid-March, after which tariff cuts on U.S. goods entering India will also begin. And according to the official U.S.-India joint statement, India will eliminate or reduce tariffs on a broad list of U.S. industrial and agriculture products, including fruits, nuts, soybean oil, wine, and spirits, while the U.S. will apply the 18% tariff rate on Indian exports across apparel, textiles, chemicals, footwear, and more. Now, so what does this mean for both the countries? Well, for India, it restores competitiveness for exporters that were hurt by previously steep U.S. duties and eases a major trade dispute. And for the U.S., the deal is expected to broaden access to Indian markets and secure significant Indian purchases of U.S. goods over the coming years. And to give us more details on this, our Assistant Editor of Foreign Affairs, Ithan Sibu, sent us this report.
In a significant development, India and the US have released a joint statement that details the framework for the trading arrangement, which is the first tranche of the BTA, the bilateral trading arrangement, to be signed in mid of March. Now, under this arrangement, India eliminates or reduces tariffs on all US industrial goods and select agriculture products like soybean oil. US meanwhile reduces tariffs from 50% to 18% and also grants relief for Indian pharma, gems and agriculture parts. India also secures preferential tariff quotas for automotive parts under US rules. Both sides have pledged sustained preferential market access with the strong origin rules. India will also be buying and purchasing $500 billion of US energy and other products for a period of 5 years. Now, this is for the first time that the details have emerged almost few days after Donald Trump announced that there is a trade agreement with India. An Indian trade minister also announcing some details.
And in a show of support, Canada and France, who oppose U.S. President Donald Trump's wish to control Greenland, have opened consulates in the Danish Autonomous Territory. Now, the move signals stronger diplomatic engagement with the Arctic territory amid growing geopolitical and economic interest in the Arctic region. Well, since returning to the White House in 2025, Trump has repeatedly insisted that Washington needs to control the strategic mineral-rich Arctic island for security reasons. In January, Trump backed off from his threats to seize Greenland after saying he has struck a framework deal with NATO chief Mark Rutte to ensure greater American influence. Now, both France and Canada say the consulates will begin operations with small diplomatic teams that will be tasked with political outreach, scientific cooperation, and support for citizens and researchers working in Greenland. Now, France describes the new consulate as part of its broader Arctic strategy. It maintains Greenland plays a central role in Arctic affairs. The announcement to open a consulate in Nuuk was made by French President Emmanuel Macron in June last year during his visit to Greenland. Macron's visit comes shortly after Trump's initial push to acquire the island in his second term. Paris has also stepped up its naval posture in the North Atlantic with a French flagship aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle sailing north last month. Canada, on the other hand, had announced it would open a consulate in Greenland 2 years ago to boost cooperation. The two consulates, which will be attached to the French and Canadian embassies in Copenhagen, will give Greenland an opportunity to practice at being independent. This is also recognition of the Arctic island's growing autonomy. This comes even as Greenland has long dreamt of cutting its ties to Denmark one day. Now, experts say that the move will make it possible to reduce Denmark's role by diversifying Greenland's dependence on outside world, and this means Greenland can have more ties for its economy, trade, investments, and politics. Now, Greenland has had diplomatic ties with the European Union since 1992, with Washington since 2014, and with Iceland since 2017. Iceland opened its consulate in Nuuk in 2013, while the United States, which had a consulate in the Greenlandic capital from 1940 to 1953, reopened its mission in 2020. Now, Spain and Portugal are once again bracing for extreme weather as fresh storms threaten regions already devastated by deadly flooding. And Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez has urged calm and caution, warning that the worst may not yet be over as another powerful storm system moves in. Relentless rain continues to batter the Iberian Peninsula. Portugal is still struggling to recover from last week's storm that killed 5 people and injured hundreds and left thousands, tens of thousands without electricity. Now, this week, Storm Leonardo has added to the devastation, killing at least one person in Portugal and forcing mass evacuations in southern Spain. In Spain's Andalusia region, rescuers evacuated around 8,000 people as roads and rail lines were shut down by floodwaters. Entire municipalities were submerged after receiving several months' worth of rain in just 24 hours. Spain's National Weather Agency, IMET, has now issued fresh warnings, with Storm Marta expected to arrive on Saturday. Forecasters say it could significantly worsen flooding in already saturated areas. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez visited the Frontline Emergency Coordination Center in Cádiz after surveying flooded farmland by helicopter. He described the situation as overwhelming and urged residents to remain vigilant in the days ahead. He's also appealed for calm, saying the coming days would be complicated and that caution was essential. On the other hand, the situation remains equally grave in Portugal, where authorities warn river levels are continuing to rise. In Portugal, around 900 people have been evacuated so far. The National Weather Agency, IPMA, says Storm Marta will likely cause another rise in river flows, particularly in southern regions and around Lisbon. Portugal's Environment Agency has revealed that the dams have released in just 3 days a volume of water equivalent to the country's annual consumption. It is a measure that is taken to prevent catastrophic dam failures. Well, civil protection officials say that there has been a slight easing in rainfall, but warns that strong winds of up to 100 kilometers per hour are expected with the next storm system. Since Thursday, emergency services have handled more than 7,500 incidents and deployed over 26,500 rescuers nationwide. In the northern tourist city of Porto, authorities remain on alert after the Douro River burst its banks, flooding shops and businesses. Prime Minister Luis Montenegro toured affected areas on Friday, estimating provisional damage at over 4 billion euros. His government has already approved a 2.5 billion euro reconstruction plan following last week's storm. In Alcácer do Sal, south of Lisbon, residents were forced to flee after the Southern River overflowed. Shop owners spent Friday salvaging what they could, marking walls to show how high the floodwaters rose even as another storm looms. Well, flood alerts have also been issued along the Tagus River basin due to rising water levels, with yet another storm set to arrive. Authorities across Iberian Peninsula are urging people to stay alert, follow emergency instructions, and prepare for more difficult days ahead. And even as the Trump administration's immigration crackdown continues with tighter rules, a new analysis by U.S.-based Cato Institute paints a starkly different fiscal picture. And this report finds immigrants have added trillions to U.S. government finances for 30 years and may have helped avert a debt crisis. Here's a report. Take a look.
President Trump has made clear that immigrants must be financially self-sufficient and not be a financial burden to Americans. This is the first line on the United States immigration website, which notifies, and I quote, immigrant visa processing updates for nationalities at high risk of U.S. public benefits reliance, end quote. The administration says it is reviewing policies to ensure immigrants from high-risk countries do not unlawfully utilize welfare in the United States. This is the latest, but ever since January 2025, when after Donald Trump took office for his second term, immigrants in the U.S. have remained on edge. While the U.S. president's crackdown on immigrants continues, a new report suggests that immigrants, both legal and illegal, have done more good than bad for government budgets over 30 years. In fact, good would be an understatement. An analysis of government data by US-based Policy Institute, Cato Institute, shows for each year from 1994 to 2023, the US immigrant population generated more in taxes than they received in benefits from all levels of government. As per the report, over this 30-year period, immigrants created a cumulative fiscal surplus of $14.5 trillion in real 2024 US dollars, including $3.9 trillion in savings on interest on the debt. In fact, without immigrants, US government public debt at all levels would be at least 205% of gross domestic product, nearly twice its 2023 level. These results, which do not account for any of immigration's indirect tax revenue boosting effects on economic growth, represents the lower bound of the positive fiscal effects. Hence, the report says that even by this conservative analysis, immigrants may have already prevented a fiscal crisis. This report is an update of a 2017 report by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine on the fiscal effects of immigration. Just to give you some numbers, here is what the NASEM Cato model shows. Immigrants paid more in taxes than benefits every year from 1994 to 2023. They generated $10.6 trillion more in taxes than total government spending. They saved $14.5 trillion in national debt via lower borrowing and interest costs. And this actually cut the US budget deficit by nearly one-third over 30 years. The Cato Institute suggests that without immigrants, US policy debt would exceed 200% of GDP, and that analysts say could trigger a US debt crisis. Let's put in perspective what led to this gap and why immigrants accounted for more US income and generated more revenue. The report highlights some key reasons. It says immigrants are much more likely to be employed even if on lower hourly wages, more likely to be in poverty but not more likely to be receiving welfare. They also consume fewer government services. They cost less per capita than the average US population. They use old age benefits less frequently and they are less likely to be in school, imposing fewer education costs. So the bottom line is that the report bases the NASEM Cato model has found that immigrants generate higher than average tax revenues overall and trigger lower than average government expenditures for the United States. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
And India are the under-19 men's World Cup champions for a record-extending 6th title. And the player who played the defining role in the victory was 14-year-old Vaibhav Suryavanshi. His record-breaking 175 off 80 balls laid the foundation for India's win. The teenager who took the world by storm in the Indian Premier League last year produced arguably his finest innings yet in the final against England. Suryavanshi smashed a stunning 175 off just 80 balls at a strike rate of 218.75. His knock included 15 fours and 15 sixes, meaning 150 of his runs came through boundaries alone. He began relatively quietly by his own standards, scoring 24 from 24 deliveries, and then he shifted gears in spectacular fashion. His first 50 came in 32 balls, while his next 50 arrived in just 23. With a 55-ball 100, he recorded the second fastest century in under-19 World Cup history. Overall, he blasted 151 runs off his final 56 deliveries. Now, Suryavanshi Suryavansh's 175 is now the highest score in an under-19 World Cup final. It is also the highest score in any ICC under-19 tournament final. His 15 sixes are the most by any batter in a youth ODI innings. His 126-minute stay at the crease was ended by England seamer Manny Lumsden in the 26th over, leaving India at 251 for 3. India eventually finished on 411 for 9 from their 50 overs. In a record run chase, England lost their first wicket in the 5th over. Ben Dawkins and Ben Mays put on a 74-run stand for the second wicket, but they scored well below the required rate. England never recovered and slipped to 177 for 7. Caleb Falconer fought a lone battle for the three lines with a blistering 67-ball 115. His effort helped England cross the 300-run mark before he fell as the final wicket. Aris Ambrish was India's most successful bowler as England were bowled out for 311 in 40.2 overs. Now let's take a look at what is making news in the world of entertainment. Singer Zayn Malik has announced his largest solo tour yet, titled Konako tour. The 31-day tour begins on May 12th in Manchester and will travel across Europe, Mexico, and North America. It ends on November 20th in Miami. The announcement follows news of Zayn's fifth album, Konako, releasing on April 17th. The album's first track, Die For Me, has already been released with a music video. Bridgerton Season 4 has made a solid return on OTT giant Netflix. The new season debuted with approximately 39 million views in just a few days, becoming the platform's most watched title. The season follows Benedict Bridgerton, played by actor Luke Thompson, and his romance with Sophie Bay, portrayed by star Yerin Ha. While viewership is about 12% lower than Season 3's record debut, the show continues to perform strongly.
Can you imagine how beautiful a ball would be? How horrible it is to be on one's feet all night.
All right, with that, we call a wrap to this bulletin. But don't go anywhere, news and updates will follow on the other side. You're watching WION World is One. Stay tuned.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
On this episode of WION Drive, Miraj rides the small Holly with a big heart. The X440T has a sting in the tail. From the beaches of Goa to the verdant Western Ghats, Miraj takes a ride down memory lane when they rode cruisers up to Kumaon to meet the OG biker. Diksha's design sensibilities are picked by the quirky Kia Ceros. But it's the Volvo EX30's minimalism that really hits the mark. Catch all these stories this week only on WION Drive at these times.
Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of South India, a daily dynamic show that will capture the pulse of southern states.
By blending the special stories, the breaking alerts, and the culture developments as well.
On the West Asia Post this week. Amidst chilling warnings and deployment of American warships near Iran, the US has not attacked the Islamic Republic. What is stopping Trump from attacking Iran? Gazans are under intense Israeli fire as questions about who will govern the Strip loom. Turkey is deploying F-16s beyond West Asia. Why is the president keen on expanding Ankara's air power?
Watch the West Asia Post only on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.